The room went completely silent when the manager pushed the termination letter across the desk and said, "You're finished here." Everyone expected Elena Carter to cry. Everyone expected her to beg for another chance, to explain herself, to remind them that she had a child at home and bills waiting on the kitchen table. But Elena did none of those things. She slowly looked at the letter, folded it once, placed it inside her worn handbag, and stood up. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady when she said, "Thank you for letting me know." Then she walked out without asking for mercy. What nobody in that room knew was that the woman they had just fired had spent years surviving things that would have broken most people. And what the wealthy owner of the company discovered only days later would change everything he thought he knew about her. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that one small act of compassion can change a person's entire life, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, but Elena kept the place spotless. She had placed inexpensive photographs in simple frames along the walls, bought a second-hand bookshelf for Lily, and hung paper stars above her daughter's bed because Lily believed stars made bedrooms feel safer. Elena worked at a luxury hotel owned by one of the city's most powerful businessmen, a millionaire named Adrian Whitmore. She wasn't a manager, executive, or important-looking employee. She was part of the housekeeping staff, the kind of person guests rarely noticed and executives rarely remembered. Yet every morning, she arrived before most of the hotel lights were fully switched on, tied her hair back, put on her uniform, and began working. Subscribe to kindness. She had a daughter to feed, school shoes to replace, rent to pay, and a small emergency fund hidden inside an old flour container in the kitchen. Every dollar mattered. Every hour mattered. She had promised Lily that no matter how difficult life became, she would always find a way. Lily was the reason Elena kept going. The little girl had inherited her mother's gentle heart and her father's eyes, though Elena rarely spoke about Lily's father. He had disappeared when Lily was 3, leaving behind unpaid debts, broken promises, and a silence that Elena had eventually learned to accept. She had stopped waiting for him years ago. Instead, she became both parents to her daughter. She worked long shifts, packed lunches before sunrise, attended parent meetings whenever she could, and came home exhausted only to sit beside Lily while she finished her homework. Some nights, after Lily fell asleep, Elena would sit at the kitchen table with a calculator and a stack of bills, quietly deciding which one could wait until next week. Speaks. Your support helps us bring more stories about courage, humanity, and second chances. Adrian Whitmore, the owner of the hotel, was a completely different kind of person. At 43, he was one of the wealthiest men in the city. His name appeared in newspapers, business magazines, and charity brochures. He owned hotels, office buildings, restaurants, and several properties in other countries. To the public, he was polished, disciplined, and almost impossible to impress. He rarely entered the hotel without a security escort or a schedule packed with meetings. Employees knew him as a distant man who noticed everything but said very little. He was not cruel, but he had built a wall around himself so thick that very few people had ever seen what was behind it. Adrian had his own reasons for that wall. Years earlier, his younger sister had died unexpectedly after a long illness. She had been the one person in his life who could make him laugh without trying. Before she died, she had told him something he never forgot: wealth could buy comfort, but it could never buy a good heart. After her death, Adrian buried himself in business. He donated money to hospitals and schools, but he rarely attended the events. He signed checks because signing checks was easier than opening his heart. He believed that helping people from a distance was safer. She explained calmly that she had never touched the watch. She remembered cleaning the desk, changing the towels, and placing fresh water beside the bed. She remembered seeing a leather travel case near the window, but she had not opened it. She asked them to check the cameras again. She asked them to speak with the room service employee who had entered after her. She even offered to let security search her locker. But the manager had already decided what he believed. She imagined the rent notice folded inside her kitchen drawer. She imagined the school trip payment she had promised to make. She imagined the nearly empty flour container where her emergency savings were kept. She could have begged. She could have cried. But Elena had learned something painful during the hardest years of her life. Begging people who had already decided you were guilty rarely made them kinder. Elena wiped her eyes before the tears could fall. Then she walked to the bus stop. She did not call anyone. She did not tell Lily. Not yet. That evening, she arrived home carrying a small grocery bag containing bread, milk, and 2 apples. Lily ran to the door and hugged her around the waist. Elena smiled so naturally that her daughter never suspected anything was wrong. They ate dinner together. Lily talked about a science project and showed her mother a drawing she had made at school. Elena listened, nodded, and laughed at the right moments. After dinner, she helped with homework. Then she tucked Lily into bed, pulled the blanket up to her chin, and kissed her forehead. Only after the bedroom door closed did Elena finally allow herself to cry. She sat on the kitchen floor with her back against the cabinet, covered her face with both hands, and sobbed silently so her daughter would not hear. The next morning, she began searching for work. She called hotels, restaurants, offices, nursing homes, and cleaning companies. Some had no openings. Others offered wages so low that after transportation costs, she would barely have enough for groceries. One manager told her she was overqualified. Another asked why she had been fired. When she explained, the conversation ended quickly. Elena smiled and told her they would figure it out. That night, she opened the flour container. There were $78 inside. She stared at the money for a long time. Then she placed it back. She had learned to survive with less. What she didn't know was that across the city, Adrian Whitmore had begun asking questions. He had returned from a business trip the afternoon Elena was fired. During his first meeting with the hotel manager, he noticed something strange in the investigation report. The missing watch had been found. What he saw made him uncomfortable. Elena entered the room carrying cleaning supplies. She worked carefully. She never approached the travel case. She spent most of her time wiping surfaces and changing linens. Later, another employee entered the room. Adrian watched the footage again. Then he noticed something else. The guest had left a large amount of cash on the bedside table. Elena had walked past it several times. She never touched it. Adrian leaned back in his chair. He had spent years believing character was something people displayed when someone was watching. The hotel had fired Elena without properly checking the evidence. The employee who entered the room after her had made a false statement because he was afraid of being blamed for the confusion. The manager had been more concerned about protecting the hotel's reputation than protecting an innocent employee. Adrian was furious. He ordered Elena's termination reversed. Then he asked for her contact information. But before he could call her, he discovered that Elena had already started working temporary cleaning jobs. She had refused to sit at home waiting for someone to rescue her. There were no complaints. No disciplinary actions. No history of dishonesty. Then he found something that surprised him. Every year, Elena had quietly donated a small portion of her paycheck to the hotel's employee assistance fund. Adrian stared at the record. He had never heard of her. Yet she had been helping other employees while struggling herself. He asked for more information. That was when he discovered Lily. And then he discovered the school. And then he discovered the reason Elena had missed several optional staff events over the years. She was raising her daughter alone, but he began to wonder how many people he had overlooked because he was too busy looking at spreadsheets. One evening, Adrian drove to the neighborhood where Elena lived. He did not announce himself. He parked across the street and watched. He saw Elena return from a temporary cleaning job carrying a paper bag. Lily ran outside to greet her. They hugged. Then Elena crouched down and fixed the little girl's loose shoelace. Adrian watched the scene from inside his car. The next morning, he went to see Elena. She opened the apartment door and froze when she saw him. For a few seconds, neither spoke. Then Adrian explained what had happened. He told her the watch had been found. He told her the investigation had cleared her. He told her the hotel manager had been disciplined. And finally, he apologized. Elena listened quietly. When he offered her job back, she looked down. She could have accepted immediately. Instead, she asked whether the hotel would treat other employees differently from now on, but she did not return to housekeeping. Adrian offered her a position overseeing employee welfare and training. At first, Elena thought he was joking. She had no business degree. No corporate experience. No polished resume. But Adrian told her that the position required something a degree couldn't guarantee. It required someone who knew what it felt like to be invisible. Elena accepted the job. The first few months were difficult. She had to learn computers, budgets, meetings, presentations, and corporate language. She made mistakes. She stayed late studying reports. She sometimes felt like an outsider sitting among executives. But she never forgot the housekeeping staff. She introduced a system where employees could report problems without fear of losing their jobs. She created emergency assistance programs for workers facing unexpected expenses. She arranged flexible schedules for single parents. She made sure cleaners had proper breaks and access to clean meals. People began to notice. The woman who had once been ignored in hallways was now sitting in meetings where decisions affecting hundreds of workers were being made. And Elena never used her new position to humiliate anyone. She remembered exactly what it felt like to be powerless, that he finally understood why she had never begged when she was fired. She had dignity. But more importantly, she had compassion. Over time, Adrian and Elena developed a friendship. It was not a fairy tale romance built on wealth. It was something quieter. Two people who had lived very different lives slowly discovered that both had been lonely in different ways. Adrian had money but had forgotten how to connect with people. Elena had very little money but had never forgotten how to care. One afternoon, Adrian visited the employee training center and saw Lily sitting at a table doing her homework while waiting for her mother. He asked what she was studying. Lily proudly explained her science project about the solar system. Adrian listened carefully. Then Lily asked him why he always looked sad, that he began spending more time with employees. He attended charity events. He visited the hospital his sister had once been treated in. He started listening instead of simply donating. And Elena continued building the employee program until it became one of the most respected workplace support systems in the city. Years later, the hotel held an annual recognition ceremony. Hundreds of employees filled the ballroom. Elena stood near the back, uncomfortable with attention. Then Adrian walked onto the stage. He spoke about the day he learned that money could not measure a person's worth. He spoke about an employee who had been falsely accused, fired without proper evidence, and sent home without begging for mercy. He told the audience that the person he had underestimated had eventually taught him the greatest lesson of his life, for choosing kindness when life gave you every reason to become bitter. Elena looked at the words and began to cry. She thought about the tiny apartment. The $78 in the flower container. The termination letter. The bus ride home. The nights she had cried silently so Lily wouldn't hear. And she realized something. The day she had been fired had felt like the end of her life. But it had actually been the beginning of another one. Sometimes a door closes because the place behind it was never where you were meant to stay. Her greatest wealth was watching Lily grow into a compassionate young woman who believed that success meant lifting others instead of standing above them. Adrian remained wealthy, but his definition of wealth changed forever. He no longer measured his life by the number of buildings he owned. He measured it by the number of people who felt safe because he had chosen to care. And Elena? She kept the termination letter. Not because she hated the people who fired her. She kept it as a reminder. She framed it and placed it in a drawer beside Lily's childhood drawings. Whenever life became difficult, she would look at that letter and remember the woman who walked away without begging. The woman who had nothing except courage, the woman who had been judged by her uniform but eventually recognized for her heart. Years later, when Lily asked her mother why she kept that old piece of paper, Elena smiled and said that sometimes the worst day of your life can become the day that changes everything. Adrian had not changed her life simply by offering her a better job. She had changed his life by reminding him that people matter more than positions. And perhaps that is the part of the story we should remember most. We never truly know what someone is carrying. The quiet cleaner may be raising a child alone. The tired cashier may be caring for a sick parent. The person who seems distracted may be fighting a battle nobody can see. The employee who makes a mistake may have spent the entire night worrying about whether their family will have enough to eat. So before judging someone, pause. Before humiliating someone, remember their humanity. Before closing a door on someone, ask whether kindness might open a better one. And sometimes, when you give someone a second chance, you discover that they were capable of giving the world something far greater in return. If Elena's story touched your heart, please don't just watch and scroll away. Like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that difficult seasons do not last forever, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks for more stories about courage, kindness, and second chances. And before we end, I have one special request for you. Comment the words, "Kindness changes everything," below. Let those words be a small promise that no matter how difficult life becomes, you will never forget the power of treating another human being with compassion. Because you never know. The person you choose to be kind to today might be the person who changes your life tomorrow.